I hated reading until I read these books. Let's go ahead and get the most controversial one out of the way, and that is Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. I don't talk about my personal life very much on this channel, but I am, in fact, an opera singer, and because of that, I have lived in a few countries. And every time I've had to learn a new language, I've used Harry Potter in order to learn those languages because it's a book that I've read 6 times in English. So, Harry Potter, first on the list. Second book, this is also going to receive a little bit of heat, but it's Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This was the first romantasy that I ever laid eyes on, and it's the reason probably that I have the channel now. Immediately following my read of Fourth Wing, I had to go ahead and read the most popular, in my opinion, fantasy romance series, which is ACOTAR by Sarah J. Maas. And yeah, I would say that this is banger after banger after banger, with the exception of book 1 and book 5. So book 1, ironically enough, this is one of my favorite fantasy romance series, but book 1 was a 2-star read for me. Wanting to be a part of this, what seemed like at the time, a cult following of people that absolutely love this series, I pushed on and I read book 2. Because the first book in a fantasy series is not always indicative of the entirety of the series, and I'm so glad that I pushed on, because book 2 in the series still to this day is one of the best fantasy romances that I've ever read. A Court of Mist and Fury, I think. Yeah, A Court of Mist and Fury. 6-star read. And I would say that the 3 books in the middle are 6 stars, including the little Christmas novella. I really enjoy that, you know? I know not a lot of people enjoy that, and I know like what I'm saying is a hot take, but I really enjoyed it because we got more with Feyre and Rhysand and their story. The last book in that series, though, is the reason why this is a 5-star series for me and not a 6-star series. Sarah J. Maas did such an amazing job of making us hate Nesta in the first 4 books. And then in book 5, Nesta gets her own book, and it's the longest book in the series, and I still hate Nesta. Like, I read this 2 years ago, and I still hate Nesta, y'all. After I read ACOTAR, I had to immediately follow that up in my addiction with Sarah J. Maas, and I read Throne of Glass. In the reading order that I read it, I actually read the prequel novellas first, and I enjoyed reading it that way. I've not done a reread of the series, but if I did, I would probably still read the prequel novellas first. I think it's a little bit weird to read the prequels later, unless they were published much later, in the case with Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. After reading through Throne of Glass, I read Lady of Darkness, the Lady of Darkness series, and this is the first time that I came across another character that was exactly like Celaena Sardothien from Throne of Glass. And in recent history, at least in terms of fantasy romance and romantasy, we have so many iterations of Celaena Sardothien that is nauseating at this point. But the first book of the Lady of Darkness series, I very much so thought that our FMC was a copy and paste of Celaena Sardothien. And boy, was I wrong, because after the first book, it takes a complete turn and it's a totally different story. So I'm glad that I learned from ACOTAR. Just because you don't enjoy the first book doesn't mean you won't enjoy the series. So I continued to read, and I absolutely loved the Lady of Darkness read. It's funny because this is actually the sequential order in which I read these books, with the exception of Harry Potter. Harry Potter, I was reading that in the early 2000s. So after I finished Lady of Darkness, that's when I stumbled upon Penn Cole, who quickly became one of my favorite authors of all time. I fell in love with DM, her FMC, from the Kindred's Curse saga from the very first book, and I was addicted. Penn Cole is an auto by author, and this goes without saying, but all of the book series that I'm going to talk about in this are 6-star holy grail for me, auto by authors. Well, with the exception of J.K. Rowling, I won't be purchasing anything else from her, but everyone else on the list, yeah, auto buy. Now, I took some space between the Kindred's Curse saga and the next thing that I'm going to talk about, which is the book series from my favorite author. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, and that is Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time. And this was life-changing. I took a year to read through this series, and it's this running joke, at least on TikTok, about people talking about how fast I get through books. But I did take a year to read through this. And it's funny because someone actually commented when I was releasing short form content about this that I read through the series too fast. And I'm like, it took me a year to read. It took me a year to read through this. It had never taken me a year to read through anything. But 14 books is quite an undertaking. And I pretty much picked up a book every month. Sometimes I was able to double up in some months. And I did take a little bit of a break from December to February. I took a little bit of a break because I picked up the Zodiac Academy, which is not on this list. But I took a little bit of a break and I enjoyed it. And when I came back to the series and I finished The Wheel of Time this year, a little bit before the new season at the time and the final season, as we know it from Amazon, was being released. The next book that got me into reading, and this is totally not in order at this point, is the Percy Jackson books. I recommend this for adults and kids. I don't think, because last year I was rereading I reread the first 3 books in the Percy Jackson series, and I enjoyed them as a 30-something. I enjoyed them. So yeah, I would reread Percy Jackson, and if you haven't put your eyes on it, I would. And if you haven't seen the series, even as an adult, I'm watching the series and I have enjoyed it, and I will be watching season 2. I hope you liked what you saw. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.